I moved to Iceland in 2017. I was in the UK for about 10 years. My background is in conservation and restoration of historical objects, and so I worked mostly in museums and historical buildings. And when I moved to Iceland post-Brexit, basically there was no jobs on those industries. There's like maybe five museums, and they're very well staffed. So I took a job working in a chocolate factory. Uh, but while I was working there, I really needed a drill, and I had just moved to the country, so I didn't know anyone that had a drill, so I couldn't really borrow from anyone, and found out that the price of a drill in Iceland is pretty ridiculous. So I thought there must be a better way of doing this. I did some research. I found out about two libraries. I specifically about Toronto two libraries. So Lawrence is in the picture there with me. Lauren, I reached out to Lawrence and say, "Hey, can I come visit you so I can find out about two libraries?" He said, "Sure." And then I showed up and he was very confused. So I stayed with Lawrence for about a week. And when I was there, it was a really interesting time because it was Eco Week in Toronto. So there was not only the two libraries that he was running, but there was also repair cafe events happening. And they had this big swap fair event in a huge old mall that was empty. And I got super, super inspired while I was there. But then I started getting super sick on the trip and I didn't know what was going on. So I went back to Iceland and straight into hospital. And turns out I have an autoimmune disease. So I was hospitalized for 3 weeks straight. And when I was in hospital, I was really bored. So I made a really bad website for Reykjavik 2 Library. And I started a crowdfunding campaign. And then by the end of the month that was sort of off hospital, quite sick, I had the money to start the project. We reached our 10,000, we were supposed to have 8,000 euros goal. That was the goal, but we ended up going way above that. And I start looking for items and locations to open the tool library. Luckily enough, so I surf as a hobby and I repair surfboards as a hobby. And behind the chocolate factory I was working, there was a surf group of guys who had a small space that I asked them if I could rent from them. So I used to work during the day in the chocolate factory and then in the afternoon at the tool library in the surf studio, and then I would repair boards to pay rent. And I put a shout out in the community in Iceland. By the way, everything in Iceland is run on Facebook. I don't know why, but everything is in Facebook groups. So I put a shout out, and then people donated 500 items straight away. This guy in the picture, his name is Gunnar. He called me and said, "I have a couple of boxes for you." And I got there, and it was like the floor was covered in boxes of tools. So suddenly we had all the tools to start the tool library, and that's how we kicked off. We decided to start Repair Cafe events at the same time. But with Repair Cafe events, we wanted to be more educational because there is a lot of repair shops and we wanted to incentivize people to use them. So we did more educational and how to repair and why we can't repair. Here's the parts that you should be to give people confidence to be able to go to a repair shop and get their items repaired. And we did really well. We broke even every year. In Iceland, when you have our opening hours, that's considered a job. So we always had to pay for the time that the people were working at the tool library. We didn't really run on volunteers. We did run the repair cafes on volunteers. You can volunteer for events, but you can all volunteer for opening hours in Iceland. So during COVID, we ended up having to move 5 times, which was an insane thing to do with over 2,000 items. So we had 5 different locations within 1 year. And we had the most demand we ever had for items and the least availability to be able to lend items out because everyone was stuck at home. So everyone wanted to paint the wall, but no one could come out and meet us to borrow the rollers, for example. So this is when I reach out to Jean from my town and say, "Hey, I had this idea of making these cabinets and allowing people to just borrow. Can I have access to your software so I can, do that?" And he was like, "Sure." And that's when we decide to pivot. We got a grant in Iceland. There's a lot of funding for innovation, not much funding for social projects, a lot of like per project budgets, but not big budgets for like actual tool libraries, for example. I wouldn't be able to find a budget for a tool library through grants, but I was able to fund like projects through grants, and there's a lot of innovation funding. So we applied for innovation funding, got some grants to be able to start building and prototyping locker systems. Around that time, the libraries were very curious about what we were doing, and they asked if we could collaborate. And I said, yes, please give me room. And they were like, we really don't have it. So I said to them, how about like a space where I could put a cabinet? And they're like, okay, we can do that. And that was the first system that we launched, and that one's still live today. And this is where we start building this quite publicly. We did it on social media. We showed people what we were doing. And then we start getting a lot of people reach out to us saying, can we buy that from you? And we're like, no, this is made of trash. So we originally wired everything with like internet wiring. I learned how to use CNC machines and solder. And one of our volunteers, who is now my co-founder, decided to take this on because during COVID, everyone was unemployed. There was a huge turnaround of people being free, really. And we were able to also get some grants to pay for wages during that period. So then we decided to focus on making this viable as a product since we had so many people reach out. And then last year, the beginning of last year, we decided, or the end of the year before, we decided to do a pre-sale to see if this is actually a thing that people were going to buy. And throughout last year, we sold 87 systems. So we consider that quite a success. And now we are deploying those systems across Europe. So this is what it looks like. Everything is modular and made to be modular. All the controllers are independent, so you can have as many lockers and you can change the design if you want. The design for the cabinets is open source, so you can change that as you please. And we can also help you change that if you want. And we decided to become a tech company. So now we have a partnership with My10, and we are building a simplified version of My10 together with for lockers. So you can have specific things within lockers, or you can have My Turn and lockers, or you can have just My Turn. You can play what you like. Everything we do is white label. So we have touchscreen options for the systems that you can use a tablet if you want, or a more specific design touchscreen. And that's white label. You can put your own branding. And then we created an app because one thing that came back from the pilots we did was that people couldn't afford the touchscreens, or they were concerned regarding, for example, vandalism in public spaces. So we decided to do the same thing, but with an app version of the system. So we built two electronic systems. One is called Iceland Mini, which is a very simple system, is 8 locks. You can upgrade to 16 locks. I would consider like an in-house system. So if you have a co-working space, or you are in a maker space or a studio, something where the items are, it's more of an inventory management system rather than a rental or subscription or membership model. That's what that's for. And then we have what we call a standard system, which is a more stronger, more public-facing system. And with that, we also realized that we needed to create a community where people could share their experiences and share their knowledge, and create a resource hub for people managing lockers for sharing. Because in Iceland, rent is extremely expensive. Look, space is really, really difficult to find. So we did quite well. We have currently 8 locations, Reykjavik, and just made an agreement with the Icelandic government for 20 more. So the plan is to really spread out the library things inventory into those locations, so people can borrow what they need, and they get to vote based on their postcode. So people in the postcodes can determine what they want. So in Iceland, we still run the project as a nonprofit, but elsewhere, we provide people with the technology so they can do it for themselves. One thing that I learned through this process is that every country is extremely different. Every community is extremely different. It makes no sense to have a top-down approach. So the best thing we can do for community is to create technology that they can use for themselves with the modularity and the way that they want to use it. So if they want to do rental, they can. If they want to do free, they can. If they want a membership, they can. If they want to integrate with their library system, they can, and that's the whole point of it. So you can see the first picture is our first cabinet system. It was a lot of internet wiring. Then we managed to simplify throughout the last 5 years our electronics, and now we have certified electronics. So this is a video of how a system works in our library. So this is Lena, our designer slash actress. And this is in downtown Reykjavik at the library, the main library in Reykjavik. This video is a little bit old now. This system is actually now double in size. So we have 30 lockers in that location. This started with 16 lockers, and the intention was very much to have the most borrowed items as easy access, and then to have the main to library location with bigger things like scaffolding and ladders and things that you need more education before you can borrow, a saws or something like that. And then we have the mini system, which we made it so you can put into IKEA furniture. So this is a Kallax, is the most thrown away piece of furniture in the world. And we wanted to be able to use something that people throw away, put some drawers or some doors onto it and make it into a sharing station. So this is what we call a mini system, which allows you to have a smaller like inventory management thing. And it has an app that goes with it. So we currently have 20 locations live, and that includes Sweden, Belgium, Canada, US, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, and everyone is deploying their projects as they want. So you can see very different designs, very different branding. And that's the whole point, is that we just wanted to be the tech layer and do the best job possible so other people can do the job for their community. We also created a emission database calculation. So we have attached to our, we'll be attaching this to our community platform where you can create a material category, then you can add an item, and this is based on percentage of weight of the material. So you can then see how much an item is borrowed and the emission factor of that. Maybe this is a little bit slow. Yeah, so it's basically in percentage. We've been working on life cycle assessments of item share versus items owned for quite a few years now as a side project within the project. So this way, for example, you can have a drill and then you can change the weight of the drill, and then you can put how many people borrowed the drill the first time, and then you can see the amount of emissions, potential emissions saved from the item shared. And then we also have the community platform. So in here you can have basically a lot of people talking about the projects, educational materials, how to use Martin with CLN, how to hire the right person to be the technical support for your project, how to use different things. You have the community. So let's say you need a designer or a developer, you can look into the community and find someone that is already working with it. Then we have the organization. So each organization has its own home. And right now the plan is so we can have a very easy onboarding process through this platform. Then we have a questions and a question segment where people can ask questions about how to use things. And we also have an issue segment, which is where we fix the bugs. So every time someone has an issue or problem, it goes there and the whole team gets notifications so we can help solve the problem if it's technical or support or so on. And then I think that's it. Yeah. So basically, we went from being just a tool library, and I say just, it's never just a tool library, but we went from being a tool library to now being a tech company that develop infrastructure so people can also simplify their borrows. I think for us, because we never were able to do volunteer-based tool library, it was always determined for us by the Icelandic legislation that we had to have employees. It was very easy for us to then create an adaptation because this way we can have the employees, we can have the funding, and we can deploy the project within the community and support libraries. We actually have pretty cool data that shows that we actually increase libraries' foot traffic and membership numbers by having our systems in the libraries. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, this is the time. I'm gonna stop sharing. There's a QR code. You're welcome to scan it, but you can also contact me later. I'll put my email there, and I will stop sharing. I think I can stop sharing. Yes, there you go. Please feel free to. Whoa, okay, there's a lot of questions on the chat. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it is available in multiple languages. Our system, you can, similar to my turn on the back end, you can add your own language. In our system, the touch screens and the app is in whatever language you like. We can update it. Doo-doo-doo. Yeah, open source per se, it's difficult to do things open source when it comes to software development, and to firmware. It's also really hard to fund it if it is open source. So we have an open source design for the cabinets, and people can more change that as they want. But the hardware itself is patented, and that's honestly sometimes to protect the community. It allows us to limit who can have access to this sort of information, and if it does, then we can pour the money back into the community rather than, allowing people to take over that. Um,
I think
so,
this is
Tina, I think that's a tool library issue in general. In our case, for the items in the cabinets, we have QR codes. We always recommend people to do this. QR codes that link you to videos on how to use the items. We do not have items in the cabinets that are extremely technical. That's normally more in the main tool library. And the reason for that is related to the fact that we want safety first. So we wouldn't put something in a cabinet that could really hurt someone. But for example, in Iceland, everyone is addicted to ice cream. So one of the most borrowed items is an ice cream machine. And as a community developer, because we were concerned that because we weren't front facing, we weren't there in person to engage with the community, that it wouldn't be that much community engagement. But because we are in the libraries, what start happening is that people wrote recipe books and left recipes for other people that were borrowing the ice cream machine to borrow with them and start writing their own recipes. We have a lot of things that happened like that where people leave information for the next one. We have a paying forward system. So, for example, if you borrow a sender, there's a little jar where you can put coins in there. So, if you use the paper that is available, you can put some coins in so the next person can go and buy some paper for the community. Um, that's kind of how we do it. Um, yeah. Does anyone has any more questions?
and
Please
there
do.
there was a question about the emissions database and whether or not that's
Mm,
accessible.
Not yet. So right now we're still working on it. We have three students joining us over the summer to do the Across Iceland project, and the aim is to gather as much data as possible throughout the summer to finalize the database. This is a feature that is attached to CLN, so it's part of our community. Um, would I want to do it publicly eventually? Yeah, I think so, but then I have to justify to people is difficult. It's similar to what Washington said about their database that they were doing. It's not as simple as just being able to make it open source, unfortunately.
Awesome. There's another question. How do you maintain items and ensure they stay in good working condition?
Okay, so we have a maintenance reporting system. So if you return the item and the item is broken, you can report it as broken. So we get a notification that allows us to repair the item. But we do weekly checks where we check items at random. We check items that have been checked out recently. We also check them for cleanliness. And if you haven't cleaned the item, you will get a cleaning fee in your account that you must pay before you can borrow again. And that is generally how we do it. So we have like what we call a technician role. We have half a day of work for every location we have. So the plan is to have eventually full-time people managing those lockers. And then generally speaking, what they do is what we call rounds. They go in the lockers, check them once a week, and then they get all the data collected, and then they call the people that have late fees or anything on that more practical level. So right now we have someone that works 3 days a week to do this.
And do you find that some of the other partners that you work with, um, and who are licensing out your system, are they kind of using that same model, or is there more of like a community repair volunteer in certain places?
Most of the time, we currently our biggest I guess client group per se is actually libraries. So we have libraries in Belgium, in Denmark and Sweden using our systems, as well as all the some two libraries as well. They were the original ones, so in Germany and Switzerland. But the ones that are have librarians, they have people working there paid for. Not many people are using volunteers. The two libraries, like so La Manivela, the guys from Bochum, and in Reykjavik, they do use some volunteers for the repair of items, but the maintenance is the most important. Once you maintain it, like you make into the habit of it, it's very little breakage or repair needed most of the time. Cleaning, sometimes people are very dirty. So they're like, they clean a carpet cleaner and they didn't empty it and it got a bit nasty, and then we just send them a little fee.
And unfortunately, I have to jump off. So if anyone else
No
has questions,
problems.
feel free to put them in the chat or just come off mute. But this was amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. If anyone has any questions or so on, I'm putting my email um, in here. If you would like to purchase a system or you want to get a quote or something to speak to us, we do pretty good discounts if you are two library things, mostly at cost. Um, and then what we do and what we want to do is within the community platform to allow two libraries and libraries of things to support the community and then to receive discounts on their subscription by helping other people within the community. So we'll do like a time bank sort of situation eventually. So if you need anything, call us. Renata is on there putting our messages. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Back to the lobby. Tack för
Thank
det.
you so much, Anna. That was great.
Thank you.